Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a two-way frequency table and a Venn diagram based on a verbal description. Then we will answer 2 questions about probability based on the table and the diagram. In this example, we have a class of 26 students. 7 play an instrument and 12 play a sport. There are 8 students who do not play an instrument and do not play a sport. As you can see, I've already given you templates for the table and the diagram, but you should feel comfortable making these from scratch on your own in the future. Let's start with the two-way frequency table. I've already labeled the total column and the total row. We need to label the remaining rows and columns. Since we're talking about students that play an instrument or don't play an instrument, and students that play a sport and don't play a sport, those are what we're going to use for our labels. So for the rows, I'll label the first row plays an instrument, and the second row will be labeled doesn't play an instrument. And then for the columns, we will label them plays a sport and doesn't play a sport. Of course, if you wanted to, you could switch this and have the sports information in the rows and the instrument information in the columns, but it doesn't really matter, so I'm going to do it this way. All right, now let's look at the information they gave us and put it in the table. We were told that there are 26 total students in the class. That's my grand total number of students, so it's going to go in the bottom right total box. Then we were told that 7 students play an instrument. So I'm going to go to the plays an instrument row and go over to the total column and put a 7 in that box because 7 total students play an instrument. We were also told that 12 students play a sport. I'll go to the plays a sport column and put a 12 in the total box. Lastly, we were told that 8 students do not play an instrument and do not play a sport. So I'll go to the doesn't play a sport column and the doesn't play an instrument row and put an 8 in the corresponding box. Now I just need to fill in the rest of the table. I know that my rows and columns need to add up to my totals. I did this in the last video, so I'm going to do it a little more quickly this time. In my third column, 7 plus the missing number should be 26, so this must be 19. In the bottom row, 12 plus the missing number must be 26, so this number must be 14. In the middle column, the missing number plus 8 must give me 14, so the missing number must be 6. In the middle row, the missing number plus 8 must give me 19, so this number must be 11. In the first column, the missing number plus 11 must give me 12, so the missing number must be 1. Now I'm going to use these numbers to fill in my Venn diagram. I'm talking about students that play a sport, or play an instrument, or do both, or do neither. So that's how I'll label my Venn diagram. They can play an instrument, they can play a sport, they can play both, or neither. Of course, if you switched the labels on your circles, that would be okay as well. I'm going to start with the part in the middle where the circles are overlapping. Since the circles are overlapping, that means the number that goes in that middle section is the number of students that play an instrument and play a sport. I can look at my table at the plays a sport column and the plays an instrument row and see that 1 is in the corresponding box. So the 1 goes in the middle of my circles. To do the circle on the right, I need to know the number of students that play an instrument but don't play a sport. I'll go to the plays an instrument row and the doesn't play a sport column and find the number 6. So that goes in the right circle. For the left circle, I need the number of students that play a sport but don't play an instrument. So I go to the plays a sport column and the doesn't play an instrument row and get the number 11. Lastly, to go under neither, I need the number of students that don't play a sport and don't play an instrument, which is 8. You'll see that the main difference between a Venn diagram and the two-way frequency table is the Venn diagram does not show all the total numbers in the diagram, but you can always find them by adding up the numbers yourself. Now let's answer these 2 questions. What is the probability that a student chosen randomly from the class plays a sport? Since I'm talking about a student, any student in the class, my probability is going to be out of 26 because that's my total number of possible students. And I just want to know the probability that they play a sport. So I need to know the total number of students in the class that play a sport. I can go to the plays a sport column and down to the total, I see that it's 12. So the probability is 12 out of 26, which is also 6 out of 13. I can also write this as a decimal, 0.4615, or a percent, 46.15%. For the second question, I want to know the probability that a student chosen randomly from the class plays an instrument or plays a sport. Once again, I'm talking about any student in the class, so my probability is again going to be out of 26. Now I want to know the probability that they play an instrument or a sport. The word "or" tells me that I'm talking about the union of these two events, the event that they play an instrument and the event that they play a sport. For union, I need to make sure that the students I count have at least one of these things to be true. So they either can play a sport, they could play an instrument, or they could play both. So at least one of the events has to be true. I can really easily figure this out looking at my Venn diagram. I also know that union means I'm looking at everything in the two circles. So I need to add up the number of students that play a sport, the number of students that play both an instrument and a sport, and the number that just play an instrument. That will give me the union of these events. So 11 plus 1 plus 6 gives me 18, which simplifies to 9 out of 13. I can also write this as 0.6923 or 69.23%.